Hello, everybody. Roger Durling with the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, and I'm so excited to be able to talk to our guests today about their new film, Promising Young Women. Tom McCarthy from The Hollywood Reporter says about Promising Young Women that Fennell's film could be called polemic, but dramatically so sharply and boldly laid out that its narrative shocks ruled day is jolting to witness how it refuses to let anyone off the hook. And the London Times says that this is Mulligan's show, though, and she proves every bit at home with humor as she's with serious drama. Please welcome Academy Award nominee Carey Mulligan and writer and director Emerald Fennell. And Emerald, I want to start right off the bat talking about the visual style of your film, which I'm obsessed with. It has all this bright, vivid colors contrasted with the dark undertones of the subject matter. Can you tell the audience how you arrived to the visual narrative of the film?
Absolutely. Well, it was, for me, the whole movie is about appearances being deceiving. So it was important that the film itself felt inviting and beautiful and feminine, and so that in many ways, like the protagonist, Cassie, it's not quite as innocent as it appears to be. I think it's an incredibly useful tactic to be able to kind of subvert audiences' expectations by putting them in a place that feels familiar but very much isn't, and that extends to absolutely to framing, to set design, to costume, and to the music in the movie.
As an audience, it is unsettling to watch this bright pink colors and then we never know if it's meant to be funny or is supposed to be absolutely horrifying. Was that part of your intention?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, that's what life is like. It's hilarious and it's horrifying. And I think particularly when you're talking about things like this, I've never been able to talk about anything complicated or difficult or uncomfortable or something that makes me feel frightened or sad without humor. It's just something that I think so many people feel familiar with, that thing of, getting the giggles during a funeral, not because they're not incredibly sad and grieving, but because their body doesn't know how else to process it. And so it felt to me, important that this is something that a movie about subject matter like this can be all of the things that this is, which is a sort of tangle of all sorts of different feelings, genres.
Carey, I want to stick with the visual style of the film. I was struck by your parents' home, which is the home that you reside in. It is like a time warp. The plastic on the furniture, the dog's paintings. It is a surreal world. What was it like for you to embody Cassie in that environment?
Yeah, I loved that house so much. It's funny because I remember the first time Alison Brie walked into that house, she went like, she just went horrified, and Emerald was like, that's it. That's how you should look when you come in. So there's that moment where Alison walks in and just takes it in. But yeah, I mean, I think so much of Cassie is stuck, and she's stuck in the moment when she lost her friend, really. And so I think it sort of suits her to live in the past a bit. The house doesn't seem weird to her. Her bedroom is still like the bedroom of a teenage girl. So I think there's great comfort in not having to move on, not having to leave her childhood home, and just sort of settling in where she is. And so I think part of that house being the way that it is that's all part of, I think if they redecorated, I think it would have rocked her. It's like, this is a place that she feels she can manage this version of things because she's got everything under her control, the way that she's doing her life at the moment. And part of that is remaining exactly where she was when Nina, went. So I think it's a very comfortable, if kind of bizarre setting to live in.
Yeah, and then you have the contrast of the coffee shop, which has a different look. It's warmer, it's more inviting. It could be both the two of you, Emerald and Cassie. The idea of the coffee shop being such a warm and inviting contrast to everywhere else where Cassie is. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Michael Perry, the absolute genius art director in this movie, we discussed a lot about making it, how to make it feel feminine, but also sort of uncanny and sinister at times. And, he said, if Cassie is blue, so Cassie's kind of palette is this kind of cool blue, but there's always red. And then as the film progresses, we sort of get redder and redder and redder. And things like that are so enormously helpful. And so I think the bluest place in the movie is her safest space, which absolutely is the cafe. And I think that's where she's at her most functional, partly because Gail is there, who is her only friend, played by the amazing Laverne Cox. And so, it was important that Cassie in this movie did have someone to talk to. You get the sense that Gail really is an incredibly sensitive, kind, wise person. But Cassie's never going to talk to, even no matter how close their friendship is, no matter how safe she feels, there's just some stuff she'll never share with anyone.
Mm-hmm. Which leads me to my next question, which is the tropes that you borrow from other films, like what the scenes with Laverne Cox. We could be in a romantic comedy, there's a peppiness to it, and then you turn the corner and it gets incredibly, to use your term, sinister. Can you talk about that subversion?
Absolutely. I mean, again, I sort of feel like these things sit side by side somewhat to me. I think that we often, particularly women, are used to adapting to the room that they're in, whether it's that Cassie is very expert at dressing for the club she's going to that night, whether it's the place where everyone goes after the office and she's wearing a suit, or whether it's an indie bar, so she's got kind of a ton of sort of multicolored extensions and leopard print on. It's just all about Cassie being able to kind of subvert and kind of mislead people. And I think that's what the movie is sort of trying to do too. It's designed to thrill but mislead, and partly, it's useful to use the audience's relationship with genre to make them feel like they know where they are, only to kind of then
pull the rug from underneath.
Yeah, yeah.
Carey, this is an incredible, complex character. She gives us this facade, this veneer of a tough character, but we know that there is turmoil inside her and there's vulnerability. Can you, talk to us about what was this challenging to convey?
Yeah, challenging in the best way, in the way that makes you sort of immediately want to sign on to the part the second you read it, because it's that kind of slightly scary, how do I do this feeling that always kind of is a great indicator of the reason to do a job. And I felt that way about Cassie. I felt like she was a mammoth task in a lot of ways, because there's an element of her that is completely in control, but she's also someone who is in a lot of pain. And although a lot of that pain is kind of hardened into her, I think, it hasn't sort of put the lights out. So I think there's still a lot going on all the time in her, and she is. And we did talk about, you know, this sort of the things that she does in the evening as, you know, something akin to a kind of self-harm and addiction to sort of having a moment of gratification and taking real pleasure in that. And then that sort of slowly ebbing away and then being left in a place of feeling kind of lost and in pain again. So there was a lot to sort of pack in there. And that's what working with Emerald, you know, it was made so easy in some ways, because I felt like, first of all, I had a complete partner in the way that we approached it. We made so many decisions together about Cassie before this, you know, who Cassie was before all of this happened. And we had a sort of ongoing conversation all the time about, you know, even in between takes of, you know, not just notes, but also new ideas that we were having all the time. So it felt like I could put my complete faith in Emerald, and we could sort of play quite a lot, which, given the time constraints of the shoot, was limited here and there, but was, you know, that was a really big part of it, was just, yeah, how closely we worked on her every day. We didn't make a lot of decisions before we went in, really. It was sort of, it evolved as we went through.
Emerald mentioned, Carey, about that she dresses differently for each man each evening that she goes out with. She's constantly role playing. You know, can you tell us about that journey, the different Cassies that we see on the different evenings that she goes out? Was that, how did you calibrate all the different versions of her?
Well, I think it was, again, I mean, it really felt like, the truth is about those scenes is that Cassie doesn't really say much. I mean, all she really says in the scene with Adam is that she's lost her phone, and that's enough of a cue for him to decide to take her home, essentially. So that was what was so hilarious and very dark about those scenes, is that she's not, you know, she's put herself in a certain environment, and she's given, you know, and perhaps is giving off a certain kind of personality in the way that she's responding to what they're saying. So when she's in the work mode, you know, she's somewhat kind of hapless, and she's not really talking. She's just sort of in a fairly happy drunk place, but there's no real engagement. And that was always really important, that Cassie doesn't ever move anything in any direction. She's completely passive. And it's similar in the scene with Christopher Mintz-Plasse, that it's, you know, she's giving off a you know, a bit of a dark hipster vibe, but she's not talking. So I think it was a lot about, you know, those scenes were so interesting to play, because we wanted, you know, the audience needed to see a certain amount of how Cassie was truly feeling, but not enough that the person that she's in the room with would realize. She needs to be, you know, looking completely wasted, but the audience, and particularly in those later scenes, knows that she's stone cold sober. And then there's the turn, which was, yeah, I suppose the bit that I was kind of the most nervous about. But again, that was the situation, you know, one of those situations where having such trust in your director means that you can kind of try stuff in those moments, and even if it sort of doesn't work, you can, you know, you feel pretty confident that you'll be taken care of, which I feel like I was.
You know, Emerald, we're used to seeing, you know, female revenge stories that become sexy or violent, and you do something different here. It's actually stranger, the fact that you know, that she it almost seduces, you know, people, but her revenge is not a violent one, you know. No. Can you talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think so much of, I agree, I love the revenge thriller genre, and I love especially, you know, the female-led movies, which are incredibly cathartic and gripping and funny. But I definitely wanted to set out to make something that felt like the revenge story of a real woman, with sort of how a real woman might behave. And as you say, there's a reason that women don't necessarily resort to violence, and that's because it's not safe for them to do so. So it was important that what Cassie does is far more, in many ways, far more troubling and existential, which is that she shows people, if they don't do the things she requires, which is, you know, apologize, acknowledge wrongdoing, those sorts of things.
Confess.
confess, then she'll teach them a lesson. And that's, yes.
Are you repelling, Mommy?
Oh,
Oh,
what was that?
No,
so,
so weird.
yeah.
Spooky.
Yeah,
I think
that was
some baby monitor somewhere. It's not mine. My kids aren't here. So
yeah, and I don't have a baby, so
right.
well, anyway, sorry for the interruption. So you know, we're talking about, I mean, it does make it, maybe it feels so weird to be watching you know, this type of manipulation or revenge, because it's not, the fact that it's not violent, it just feels, maybe it's because it's unsettling to us that we have certain expectations that we want it to turn violent and it doesn't.
I also think it's kind of disturbing how inured we are to that kind of violence. Like, we're totally comfortable with somebody going into someone's house, cutting off their head, sort of torturing them in all manner of sort of frightful ways. But actually, somebody doing very little is so much more chilling. You know, what Cassie does, I think most people would agree they'd rather take the punch in the face than the kind of reckoning Cassie's bringing.
Mm-hmm. And Carey, even when Cassie is manipulating and confronting the people that she's doing, there is, maybe I'm reading too much into it. There's a slight sense of delight in what she's doing. Is that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, but that's I think the part of it that does feel good to her, that she's you know, she's absolutely meticulous about the way she plans things, and I think part of you know, that feeling for her is the element of control, that she's found a way to control the pain that she's in because she's got this plan and the plan is going the way she wants it to. And I think, you know, what's so surprising for her in the scene with Jordan, played by Alfred Molina, the lawyer, is that he doesn't go the way that she's expecting him to. I think she's expecting him to be really defiant and unpleasant and call the police or something, you know, who knows. But the fact that he immediately falls on his sword and begs for forgiveness is just completely so destabilizing for her. But I do think there's a dark pleasure in seeing the person across from her start to unravel, and I think she does take pleasure in that. She certainly takes pleasure in seeing that happen to Alison Brie's character and to the Dean, to see them start to freak out. I think that's gives her tickle.
And before I forget, because you mentioned Alfred Molina, you know, you co-starred, he was your dad in your career-making role in an education. What was it like to revisit with him, but in a completely different dynamic now?
Oh, so nice. Yeah, he's just the greatest, and he's such an exciting actor to work with, because you just don't know. You know, I walked in there having no idea how he was going to play that, and he was shocking and surprising and unnerving in all the best ways. But then you go outside to have a coffee whilst they're changing the setup, and he's just the sweetest man on the planet. So it was one of those lovely days when we were in the room, it was quite serious, hard work times, and then outside it was just having a lovely catch up, because we haven't seen each other in a while. I mean, we only had him half a day or something, so it was lovely.
But I kept thinking when I was watching it, you know, what a dangerous, nefarious scene it is. And then, but in back of my mind, being aware that, oh, they feel comfortable with each other as actors, so it's okay, Roger, don't worry about them. Yeah, he's terrific at it. It's quite a memorable turn that he does. And Emerald, the choice of Something Wonderful, the Rodgers and Hammerstein tune, in the most, I mean, I don't want to, for those who haven't seen the film, I don't want to divulge what happens, but it is it's a wicked, troubling choice of music. You know, how did you arrive at that choice? The King and I, Something Wonderful.
The King and I, Something Wonderful, and it's the original recording from it too, which was again down to actually wonderful Imogen Lloyd-Webber and Sue Jacobs that got us that amazing piece of music. No, it was in the script. So much of the music in this movie is kind of taking well-loved things like "It's Raining Men," for example.
Yeah, at the beginning, yes.
And sort of reframing what those, lyrics mean, and something wonderful. I think probably one of the most romantic songs ever written, one of the most beautiful pieces of music, and it's about a very, very cruel man who is neglectful and unkind, but occasionally he does something wonderful. And so it kind of, that seemed to me to be a kind of perfect distillation of what we are willing to forgive, but in some people and not in others, I guess.
And then can you talk to us about your cinematographer and just the lighting? I was compulsively watching the fact that Cassie has a halo. She's like lit from above throughout the movie. I made you giggle. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, well, early on, there were lots of discussions about this movie being just, a very honest story about one woman, about Cassie, a very personal story, but also something that felt kind of allegorical and biblical. And she's sort of both a sort of martyr and an avenging angel. She's somebody who she offers redemption or she offers punishment, and that seems like such a simple and wonderful journey. I think it's a journey we all kind of understand. And so early on, in the mood boards and all of the things that we were pitching to finances to explain to everyone what it was going to look like, one of the sections was Cassie as an avenging angel, and it was sort of, as you say, using those kind of beams of light, using things around her that could look like halos, wings. Yeah, because to me, that's just the pleasure of being able to make a film. You can be, somewhat metaphorical. You can exist in a world that feels real and not real at the same time.
Carey, about the last scene of the movie, I don't want to go too much into details because it's Cassie's story to tell, and we shouldn't divulge to people the ending. But how the bachelor scene, how difficult was that to embody and to film?
It's yeah, it's one of those things that's when you've got really brilliant writing, I think you feel I mean, that was when I read that, that whole sequence, when I was sent the script, I thought, oh my gosh, I can't wait to say those lines. I just couldn't wait to do the scene. So, those kind of scenes have a massive build-up. But I had, an amazing partner in Chris Lowell, and again, it was one of those situations where, Emerald and I kept super close on the whole thing. And I got into a bit of a sort of cycle of wanting to do it over and over and over again. I kept on saying, Emerald, one more take, let me just do it one more time, and just kept on. So I couldn't really let it go. And I never kind of figured out why, but I just wanted to keep going at it. But it was, yeah, I mean, so much of this film was just fits of giggles and trying together. And then there were days like that were not. But it was, it was a really, you just so rarely get such incredible writing to work on. So I was loving every second of it, but it was definitely a challenging day.
Emerald, Bo Burnham, can you tell us about choosing him? Is quite an offbeat, but he brings such a terrific quality. He's almost like a puppy dog.
He's amazing. I mean, I think it's funny. I've been such a huge fan of his for years. I just think he's absolutely brilliant, and yeah,
and a terrific director also. 8th grade.
A terrific director, an amazing songwriter. I mean, honestly, it's a bit too much. He's so tall, very unfair. But we did a chemistry reading chemistry read between him and Carey, and it was just electric because they do different things. They're both geniuses in a different way, and it really, really worked because he's just kind of probably not in a dissimilar way to kind of Cassie and Ryan would be. There's a sort of incredible charm and warmth, but also a slight guardedness. And that, I think, is a really great place to start with two people. They kind of, even though ostensibly they're very different, they share these kind of qualities. But yeah, I mean, he came and read with Carey, and the moment he left the room, we were both like.
And Carey is such a complicated relationship that he brings a chance for Cassie for redemption, but at the same time triggers actually this other darker road that she decides to go into. Can you tell us about working with Bob, and also that shift when he that his relationship causes in your character?
Yeah, I mean, working with Bo is just so delightful. And as Em said, when we did the chemistry read, he walked out the door and we were both just completely, obsessed with him. He was hilariously funny. But the thing about Bo is that he's also just very, very truthful as an actor. There's no false notes. He just kind of can't be not truthful. And so working with him was amazing. And it was those scenes where she's sort of in two minds, particularly one where she sort of, I guess, triggered for the first time about her past experiences when he mentions this person from her past for the first time that she has tried so hard not to think about for so long. There's a real split going on, because it means that whenever they're together, she pretty much always has a whole other narrative going in her head at the same time. But I was just so lucky to get to, as I said before, Emerald and I didn't make lots of hard and fast decisions about how to play scenes or anything. We made sort of backstory decisions. We had lots of conversations about Cassie and about Nina, but not lots of kind of performance decisions at all. And so I think so much of Cassie's kind of vulnerability and warmth is in no small part due to Bo and his performance as Ryan, because he was so charming and so instinctive and funny, and so I just couldn't imagine anyone else playing that part ever. He was perfection.
And you have such an endearing scene in the pharmacy breaking into Paris Hilton's song. It's you fooled us, Emerald, to think that we were going into happy ever after here in that sequence.
Well, I think it's important that there are kind of multiple universes, I think, that we could all live in, right?
Yeah.
There are parallel lives that we could all live. And so that's what's so wonderful about being able to make a film, is you can kind of at least show the possibilities of those worlds, those different lives.
Which leads me to the most difficult questions to ask, is that the film deals head on with toxic mentality in our society that is deeply ingrained, and we're all culprits. And what's fantastic about your film is that it makes us think. It doesn't let us off the hook, but at the same time, it's highly entertaining. And so there is this really strong current when you're watching the film of I'm being entertained. It's a thriller, it's provocative, etc. But in the other side, it makes you question, even our role in this toxic world. Can you tell us, Emerald, about balancing that both?
Yeah, of course. I think it's much easier for you to stick a knife in someone's belly if you've tickled it first, I suppose. There's something about I think if you're going to have difficult conversations, they need to be accessible. And if you're going to make films about troubling things and a part of a culture and society that was and is still, as you say, completely commonplace and normal, then you need to kind of fling open the doors so that everyone can come and have that conversation together. You don't want to make something that's overly didactic, that's, you know, I think messages are only really effective and movies are only really effective if you want to watch them, that you like the movie, that you think the movie's good, but also if it makes you think or argue about it afterwards, then that's what you really want. And certainly when I think of Get Out or Midsummer, those movies that I couldn't stop thinking about the last couple of years, they did the same thing, just like immensely entertaining movies and genre movies, but that said such unbelievably troubling things about our society and relationships and all of that. So I think the two kind of, it's almost necessary for me for those to coexist.
Mm-hmm. Carey, is that part of what attracted you to the project?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think it's so important to want to see a film as opposed to feel like you should see a film. I don't like sort of films as homework, sort of moral homework, where you think, all right, I know I should watch this because I know it's got a really important message. As you know, and that's not to, you know, say those films aren't valid, but I think, you know, it's storytelling is at the heart of what we do, and you've got to make that story something that is, you know, desirable, that you want to see and that you're excited to engage with. Otherwise, you make your job so much harder. So absolutely, it was that. And, you know, I think Emerald's unique look at this is just, I couldn't have come from anybody else. So that was doubly exciting.
Mm-hmm. And Emerald, I was deeply impressed how characters are not fully villainous. You know, I'm thinking of particular character like Madison that could have easily become neurotic and villainous, and we actually understand. I mean, you know, they're all complex. Also, the Connie Britton, Dean Walker. We understand her, you know, her duality. You know, can you talk about making them, you know, that way?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the same would go for Cassie as well, and Carey's amazing performance. I think I just don't know any villains. I don't know any, like, of course I know people I don't like. I think there, you know, I know a ton of douchebags, sure, but villains are very hard to come by. And so, you know, if we're talking about something like this, a very, very widespread thing, it was important to acknowledge that everyone in this movie thinks they're good. You know, they absolutely identify as good. They've just not really interrogated their behavior enormously, and they've done some really bad things.
Mm-hmm.
And that just seems, I don't really know how else, because of course you have outliers, you have psychopaths and you have saints, but in general we're all just doing our best, and sometimes we fail horrifically.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ladies is an incredible film, and I encourage everybody who's listening to spread the word. It opens on Christmas Day, is it? December 23rd?
Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you for both of you for being here. It's quite a delight to talk to both of you, and congratulations again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.
Happy holidays.
Oh,
yeah, you too.
Yeah. Ciao.